Hey guys, it's Pastor John. Thanks so much for joining me today for lunch with St. Luke. And it's such a privilege to be walking through the Gospel of Luke with you as we've really started into this story. We know Zechariah has now had his conversation with the angel. He has been informed that they're going to have a son, quite surprisingly at their age. And then, of course, Zechariah has expressed some level of unbelief or disbelief of cynicism. And if you remember, the angel Gabriel reacted to that cynicism with some anger. So we're going to move back into our story here today. And again, there's a reminder of where Zechariah is. He's in Herod's temple. He's at the altar of incense there in the sanctuary. He's met there with Gabriel and had this dialogue concerning John and also concerning Zechariah's unbelief. And now in verse 21 it says, meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah, amazed that he stayed so long in the sanctuary. When he did come out, he could not speak to them. Then they realized he had seen a vision in the sanctuary. He kept making signs to them and remained speechless. When the days of his ministry were completed, he went back home. So here, Zechariah the priest has become Zechariah the mime. Here's Zechariah trying to explain having seen an angelic vision, even though he's unable to explain anything. You could picture the amazement, the startled looks, the faces of the people. This obviously he had been in there much longer than they would have expected. Their form of worship is a little alien to us. They're much more distant and removed from everything that's going on. They're outside the sanctuary, praying there. For them, this was much more of kind of a they're praying outside the sanctuary, and they're sort of functioning almost as spectators as the priests go in to do their thing and then come back out. He was in there a long time. This was not your normal pattern, and for him to come out entirely mute, that would be shocking as well. Clearly, he's able to communicate with hand gestures that he's seen something, but not what directly has been seen, or not specifically the message that had been given. And so, he finishes his job as priest, completes his term in ministry, and then of course they return home. And in verses 24 through 25, it says this: after these days, his wife Elizabeth conceived and kept herself in seclusion for 5 months. She said, "The Lord has done this for me. He's looked with favor in these days to take away my disgrace from among the people." Notice Elizabeth's attitude. First off, she is crediting this to God. She recognizes that what's going on in their life right now has to be the grace of God, has to be his movement in their life. It's him doing something miraculous. Obviously, for years and years, they've prayed for a baby. Obviously, for years and years, they tried to get pregnant. Obviously, at this point, they had both reached a point of cynicism to where they recognize on their own they're just simply incapable, and it's an impossibility for them. But here is God doing what God tends to do, things that are impossible from our own resources. He most certainly can accomplish, and he has his purposes and his plan. We're going to find out a lot more about their son John going forward, but here we have just a picture of this couple, of them heading home, of Zechariah dealing with his consequence and a really, really bad case of laryngitis. Here you have Elizabeth, and she's not even wanting to make this public all that soon, just because, maybe she's even still afraid she's going to miscarry, or there's going to be another problem like that. But she is so thankful to God for this. Obviously, as the angel said, there's rejoicing here, right? And she knows that, as a woman, particularly in that culture, to be unable to bear children really would be, a disgrace. That would be something that would be terrible and humiliating and just incredibly difficult. And here, God, in the midst of his plan and his purposes, is also caring for her, meeting her needs, showing her grace, and she's very thankful for that. Guys, I'm just reminded as I think about their story, as I think about this couple who love God, this couple who have really done their best in life to try to follow God, but have had this just grave disappointment, this profound disappointment of not being able to have a child, this disgrace, this thing which in their honor-shame culture would have been something of a shame placed on them, particularly placed on Elizabeth. That this couple, with all of their complexity, with the kind of cynicism that seemed to have set in Zechariah, that nonetheless God was at work, and he was at work not only in the great vast stage of getting things set for the Messiah, and what John was going to do with his mission, and all of that is clearly there, but God is also at work in this life of this couple, and that he meets them right in the midst of their problems, right in the midst of their embarrassment and disgrace, right in the midst of their cynicism, and even in the midst of all of that, God meets them, and that God cares. And I want you to know that if you're going through a time where perhaps you've grown a little bit cynical in something that you've been praying for, perhaps you've come to that place where it's a little difficult for you to even trust God. Perhaps you're even at that place where it's hard for you to even imagine a positive solution in your life. I want you to know that God is still about his work. He's still pursuing his purposes, and he's still at work in our lives. Now, it doesn't, let me be very clear, that doesn't always mean that it's going to turn out exactly the way we expected. But it does mean that it's going to turn out the way that he wants it to turn out. And that he's still got his plan and purpose. He's still got a part for us in his plan and purpose. And that really the way to experience joy in walking with God, the only way that you're really going to experience joy in walking with God, is to receive the grace that he offers with trust, with faith, to have that stance before him that is grateful, that's thankful for what he's doing in your life. And so what a beautiful picture of what it looks like to walk with God even through the complexities of life. Well, Lord Jesus bless you, and keep following Jesus.